I've always had a love of architecture. I've been drawing floor plans since I was a little kid, but I very quickly realised from listening to the podcast, I really didn't know much at all. So I thought it was time to get educated. So I learned a lot from the podcast, but I felt like I needed to have more education so that I would be able to go into this, not be taken advantage of, be confident in the decisions I was making, be confident in my interactions with people. Had some bad experiences with tradies in the past. They said, oh, yeah, look, I'll just talk to your husband about that. I'm going, but it's my design. I'm the one who's doing this. Don't talk to him. He doesn't know. So I wanted the confidence to be able to know what I was talking about.
Well, Elizabeth, this is a really amazing experience for me because serendipitously I've ended up in Sydney on the day that we were due to do a podcast conversation together. You live in Sydney and were kindly able to come in and meet me. I organised this meeting room in the State Library and you've come in and met me. You've been in Undercover Architects program since 2019 and we were just chatting before that you've been part of the community for longer than that. And so we've had lots of online interactions. Yeah. This is the first time we're meeting in person. We're sitting in very close quarters trying to make this work. I've got all of this makeshift stuff that, I've brought here to try and have this conversation. And so I'm hoping that the sound works well for everybody. But it is just so lovely to be here with you.
Thank you.
And to be finally able to talk about your project because you've got a really unique experience, I think, in terms of the length of time that you joined before you knew you were going to execute, and then when you've made the decision to execute, you are executing really quickly. And so I'm really keen to, I suppose, go through that and help people understand what it's been like for you to research so proactively in the lead up to knowing that you were going to be doing a project but you weren't sure when or what it would look like, and then also what that's meant for you personally in terms of your own learning and those kinds of things. So I'm wondering if before we dive into talking about your project, you could tell us a little bit about yourself and who this project is going to be for, your family, those kinds of things.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I'm just so excited to be here and to meet you in person. It's very serendipitous, as you said, so thank you. This house is going to be for me, my husband, of 30 years, our 3 boys, who are Aiden's 21, Brendan's 18, and Julian, the baby, is 15. We have 2 standard Labradoodles who are house dogs, a free-range cockatiel who has the run of the house, and also 8 budgies that also live in a very big aviary in our house. So that's who the home is for.
Wow.
And then any family and friends who happen to come in as well.
Fantastic. That's a lot for a house to hold, isn't it?
It is. It's very noisy with all those birds and dogs.
And are you the only female, or have you managed to bring some animals in that keep you company?
No, look, I think 3 of the budgies might be female, and to be honest, they're not very nice. They won't go shopping with me. They won't do their nails, hair, and makeup. So, yeah, I'm the only female.
Classic.
Big change for me. I grew up with 5 sisters. So I've gone from a totally female household and family to totally male. It's very bizarre.
That's amazing. So, oh, wow. So can you give us a bit of background about, I suppose, what your living arrangement has been like for the last few years? And I think why you made that decision to join Home Method in 2019. Of course, back then it wasn't Home Method, it was another iteration of the program. What I suppose, where were you at and what did you know was coming and what made that call to kind of invest in the program?
Okay, so about 9 years ago now, they rezoned where I live. So I'm in Castle Hill in Sydney, so just near Showground Station now. They rezoned it because they're putting the metro line in, and our place was given a higher density, and all the houses are going to be rezoned to be then developed into units. So we knew that at some point a developer would come buy our place and we would have to move on. So I just sort of had started thinking about, well, what's next? Where do we go? There were a lot of iterations in those early days, getting together with neighbours, talking to developers and those sorts of things. And then one day I can't remember why, I was curious about underfloor heating. So I Googled it and I came across your podcast and I listened to it and I went, oh, that's awesome. I'll just see what else is here. So that got me listening to the podcast. And then as time rolled on, we realised, we were in a contract. And I thought, well, we need to go somewhere. I've always had a love of architecture. I've been drawing floor plans since I was a little kid, but I very quickly realised from listening to the podcast, I really didn't know much at all. So I thought it was time to get educated. So I learned a lot from the podcast, but I felt like I needed to have more education so that I would be able to go into this, not be taken advantage of, be confident in the decisions I was making, be confident in my interactions with people. Had some bad experiences with tradies in the past. They said, oh, yeah, look, I'll just talk to your husband about that. I'm going, but it's my design. I'm the one who's doing this. Don't talk to him. He doesn't know. So I wanted the confidence to be able to know what I was talking about. So that is what prompted me to sign up.
Fantastic. And so when you obviously had that rezoning done, what kind of timeline expectation did you have about how much time you'd have to kind of make that next call about where you were going?
Initially, we thought it would all happen very quickly. We thought it would be like a 1 year, 2 year turnaround, if that. And the first contract we signed was actually a 4-month turnaround, and that contract fell over very quickly. Developers have a way of seeing a property, negotiating deals, getting very excited, try to find finance, can't find finance, falls over. So we very quickly realised that 1 to 2 year time frame was sort of kind of on the horizon, but we didn't really know where. So it kept moving. So I think we probably signed 3 or 4 different contracts along the way, and they all sort of fell over at different points. So that horizon just kept moving and moving and moving. But we knew one day, it was going to happen one day.
Wow. That must have been, like, how have you managed that mindset-wise? Because you're kind of in a holding pattern, aren't you? And at the same time, you have to be ready to act. Like, how have you handled that from a personal point of view?
My husband will say I'm annoyingly optimistic. So that I think probably helps. And that knowing that on the horizon somewhere, I was going to finally realise the dream of building a house, which I've wanted to do that since I was a kid. So that kind of kept me going, knowing that one day that house was going to materialise, it would be just how we wanted it, and it would be absolutely perfect, and it was worthwhile dealing with everything we were dealing with. And look, there were certainly moments when there were tears and anger and some not very nice words said about people, but there were moments that wasn't great, but for the most part, it's just knowing that that was on the horizon, and that's what kept me going for the most part.
Gotcha.
And the support of the family, of course. Yeah. And the longer it went on, the more I got to educate myself, and actually I quite enjoyed that. So
yeah,
that helped.
Yeah. And how did you find? Obviously you said you've been interested in architecture and home design since you were a kid. You've wanted to kind of have this project, this home that you've created since you're, for a long time. How did you find the education, I suppose? Did it shift and change what you thought you wanted when you started? How's that journey been for you?
Absolutely. So very early on, we found a block of land that we loved, and I drew up a plan for that house, that land. And look, I had some awareness of, Eastern Light and Northern Light and those sorts of things. And if I look at that plan now, I laugh to myself because I had a guest room. I actually don't remember the last time we had guests stay. So all our families in Sydney, if the boys' friends stay over, they get a mattress on the floor. So it didn't need a guest room. That's long gone. Had the obligatory theatre room. Well, that's gone too. When would we have used it? The way we consume media with the boys being older, and such a dedicated space, just a waste of money. I think I took out an extra bathroom that we didn't need. So that has certainly changed. But I think there are a couple of other pivotal moments. Jane Hilliard's Enoughness podcast,
yep.
That really made me challenge my thinking about what do we really need and how could we use it. That challenged my thinking on what do we really need, but I also tied that in with the using rooms well, rather than just having a dedicated space it just uses once, and it's a lot of money to pay for for that real estate. And also there was another episode that changed my way of thinking about the house, which was with Sarah Lebner on the renovation, the significant renovation. So I'd always thought the only way to get the house I wanted was to build new. But then I listened to that and tied in with enoughness and thinking about rooms being multi-purpose and using the space that you're paying for really shifted where I wanted to go with the building.
Yeah, it's interesting that podcast about enoughness is one that a lot of people talk about being a turning point for them. I know in Live Life Build, I have builder members who they'll have clients that are struggling with their budget, and they know that really the only solution for them is to consider the amount of area that they're building. That's going to make the biggest dent on saving cash in their project. And so they'll send them to that conversation about enoughness. At the same time, it's amazing how triggering that conversation about enoughness was too. Like the amount of messages I got about, saying, does Jane even have kids? Like, how is she living? And it's really, I think it's really interesting how different people have what they've made that mean for themselves. And at the end of the day, like information is just information. It's all about what we make it mean as to how it lands with us. I love, though, that it was a conversation that we had, because it has been really useful for a lot of people just to reassess. And I think that's the thing that I love most about the Undercover Architect community, is it's full of people who are just choosing to be more intentional about what they create.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, even though you've been waiting all of that time, and obviously, you mentioned a couple of contracts have fallen over, you've been making decisions about what you're going to do next, you've been kind of working through the idea of what it might be. What I've loved is you've actually been a really active member of our group. You've been in there generously offering your learnings to others. You've been really interested in other people's projects. Why did you make that choice? Because I feel like there are some members who join early and then they go, I'm just going to research and then I'll get involved when my project starts. But you've been very different in that regard, in terms of you have really dived in and you've been so visible and contributed so much, even though your project wasn't happening yet.
I find it fascinating. I've learnt so much, and obviously we learn a lot from listening to the podcast, and we learn from the courses that I've done, but the questions people ask are also fascinating, and reading through it and understanding other people's takes has taught me things as well. So I think that's why I've contributed, and I think if I can give something, then I like doing that. And because I've certainly gained so much more than anything I've contributed. Just things I've learned. There's some key members there I've learned some amazing stuff from, and the things they deal with, I know are things that I will deal with as well. So if they've asked that question, I don't think many people ask totally unique questions in this world. So if they've asked a question, I know at some point I'm going to be asking the same question. So I think it's benefited me to stay engaged. I think that's the main reason.
Yeah. It's been really lovely, because obviously now that the group's been going for some time, we've seen projects right throughout. A project can take a long time, even when you're ready to go as soon as you join, and yet it's obviously we've had the benefit now of it going for such a time that we've been seeing more and more homes finish, and so it's really awesome, isn't it, to be part of seeing those projects come to fruition.
Absolutely. In fact, I think once ours is done, I don't think I'll sign off ever. I don't want to sign off ever. I'll still be there.
Now, can I ask you, you also took your learning inside home method to a whole nother level in terms of your own professional career. So can you talk through that and your decision making around all of that?
Yeah, for sure. So coming through school, aside from the various different careers you sort of think of as you're coming through, the one thread that I kept onto was architecture. But if anyone remembers, back when I was leaving school, we had the recession that Paul Keating said we had to have, and the building industry collapsed. And with all the wisdom of a 17-year-old, I concluded that meant that if I became an architect, I'd be unemployed and I'd be designing kitchens for a living. So I went and did economics at university instead, and ended up down the chartered accounting path, which don't regret. It's taken me to where I am. It's fantastic. But I realised my boys were getting older. They were studying, and I sat down one night with my eldest doing university applications. And as I was scrolling through, architecture popped up. And I went, I wonder what it'd be like to do an architecture degree. So I kept clicking all the links, and I realised, because I have a base degree, it was going to cost me $30,000 a year and 5 years of my life. And I knew it's one of those professions, it's heart and soul. Yeah. And the study is heart and soul, and I would have to give up too much. So then I thought, well, what about TAFE course? So I did some research, and inquired and sat on it for a bit, and I realised one night when I had dinner with a girlfriend I hadn't seen for a while, I said, she said, oh, what are you up to? I said, oh, I think you're doing this TAFE course. She said, yeah, you told me that a year ago. I went, yeah, okay. So I've been sitting on this for a while and I'm starting to, say the same thing over and over. I need to act. So I enrolled. So it's a 2-part course. So you have to do residential drafting as a precursor to building design. So I've completed that. So technically I'm a qualified drafter, but my interest is more the residential design. So I started that back up. I took a 6-month break just because of locations of courses. And so that started back in July this year. So that was it. So I've never lost that love of it. I've never walked into a house without thinking, if this was my house, what would I do? What would I change? I've always been drawn to floor plans. I bought, when I used to read magazines, Home Beautiful, I got that one because it had floor plans. And I'd look at the pictures and the relationships between the rooms, and I just got into Domain. So, to look at houses and floor plans. So everything just kept saying do it. And the realisation that, we're alive for a long time and life doesn't have to end. You're not set on this path. You can change direction. And I thought it was important for my voice to also realise that there's more to a mum than just a person who says, hey, bring your dirty clothes out and come out for dinner. I want them to see that, I could also study and learn and evolve. And so I think it's all those things.
Yeah, it's amazing. I have loved watching how that's ignited in you, and then you've backed yourself to go and actually pursue it further, because it does take, when you've done a career for a long time, it is a big personal shift and a mindset shift to be able to, and like you say, architecture is an all-in thing. And I think too, architecture as well, you'd come out of your degree and it would still be a very long apprenticeship to be doing probably what you want to be doing, whereas doing building design, you're going to get the chance, obviously, to be able to be doing designing and drawing and things like that.
I hope so.
And it's been really amazing watching how that is the case for some Home Method members. We've had Cindy on the podcast talking about, her studies in as a thermal performance assessor. We've got other members who have definitely shifted themselves career-wise. Claire is now working she's working part-time for the builders that built her home. She's helping them in terms of their processes and their client-facing side of business. So I love seeing how this goes from being, oh, let's do this for our own house, to then, oh my gosh, actually this is something that really does inspire me to do more.
Oh, definitely inspiring. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, you've obviously recently had a change in terms of all of that waiting and things, sitting around and those contracts falling over. Can you talk us through what's been happening for you over the last sort of 3 to 6 months that has really shifted things?
It's been full on. We signed a contract with a developer, which we knew this time it wasn't going to fall over. Things felt different, and he was actually already moving in the area. He'd already done some demolition work, so we knew it was going to go ahead. So we signed a contract with him back in February, which we were due to settle in February next year. But he's said to us, if you find the right place, we'll let you out early. So we went to talk to a real estate agent just to get a feel for the market, and he asked us what we wanted. We told him we still have to save a bit of space. My husband collects cars, and we wanted something that was untouched, because I didn't want to pay for someone else's crimes against architecture and have find spack filler and paint covering up all manner of sins.
Were you looking for an existing house, or were you looking for a block of land?
I was at that stage.
Yep.
So and the initial plan had been to find land and build. And the shifting Australian property market meant that the land and the build was probably going to be more than we wanted to spend, and probably more than we could afford anyway. And so coming back to the point before of having listened to Sarah and Jane, I thought, well, maybe we actually look at something that we can renovate. And I'm hugely into sustainability. We've got one planet, we need to look after it. So I thought, well, what exists is the most sustainable option. So maybe the path we look at is actually renovating instead. So, I've been looking on Domain for 9 years since this started, and I look at every house, and as I've learnt more, I sort of go straight to the map, look to see where it is. Then I go straight to the floor plan, I look for the north sign. If I don't see a north sign, I don't go any further. And then if I see a north sign, I look at where the orientation of the rooms. Then I sort of think about, well, could this be changed? It's amazing how many of them are poorly oriented.
I know, there's loads of existing houses that just face the wrong direction, don't they? Yeah.
Houses that don't have any windows on the northern side.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. So So I sort of had all that I'd been seeing, and in all the years I'd only seen about 2 or 3 places. I actually went, that's a good house I could do something with. So we went to this agent, and he said, check this place out, and I got online and went, yeah, that's it. And it was a serendipitous moment, because we'd just been in the car that morning, and I'd always thought in the back of my mind, the toughest thing about this new house, however tough the last 9 years had been with the whole redevelopment, the tougher part was going to be getting agreement on the next place, finding something that my husband and I agreed on that the boys would be happy with. And that morning in the car, before we even knew we were going to the real estate agent, he said, it'll be like when we got our current house, we'll walk in and we'll just know. We walked into this house and we just knew. So it just felt right, and I could see its potential. So it was built in 1981. It's original, solid condition, but a much smaller, pokier house than we live today. And if you had little children, the little bedrooms, which are like 2.4 by 3.1 or something like that, you could maybe, little kids could live in it. But when you've got like 3 almost
strapping boys,
yeah, and they don't fit in single beds and they study, then we needed something bigger than that. And like the kitchen was a walk-through one. You walk straight through the kitchen to get to other rooms, and that would just drive me insane. So this place had the right orientation. It was north facing. It had solid foundations, and I knew that I could stay within the existing footprint and roof, which would also hopefully keep down the cost of renovation, and also tick those sustainability boxes of maintaining what we possibly could. We saw the place and made an offer. And so within 6 days of seeing it, we actually had bought it. But I did the first thing I did before we did decide to do it, I got hold of the Section 10.7 certificate, and I went through and I checked all the overlays, so I knew.
Rule number 1. What are the rules?
Yes, rule number 1. I was delighted to know that we could have an oyster farm on our property.
Oh, okay.
So, who knew? Downtown Castle Hill, you can have an oyster farm. There's a creek at the bottom of the property, so it runs down to the Hawkesbury eventually. So maybe, who knows? But so I did know going into it that that we would be able to do what we wanted to do. I think zoning is, I think they call it E4 or E4. So there's a large part of the block we're not allowed to do anything with, but because we were staying under the existing roof line, it's not a problem.
Gotcha. How big is the block?
4,000 square metres.
Oh, so it's an acre.
Yeah. So it's on it's in Glenhaven, beautiful little suburb outside of Castle Hill. And Glenhaven is largely a whole series of ridges with fingers of bushland coming through.
Yep.
We're on a battle axe block, so the street we're on is actually a beautiful, really hilly street. Our end is a little bit busier, but because we're 20 metres back,
gotcha.
You don't hear anything.
Yep.
We've got 3 other houses fronting or backing onto us,
yes,
but you don't see it because of the arrangement of the trees.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so obviously you sort of looked at it, had that offer accepted, and you'd already made kind of a decision about what you could roughly do with it. What else did you find out about it in terms of the constraints? Because it's a bush block, obviously.
Yes. Well, the little voice in my head proved correct. We knew it was definitely in a bushfire zone. I'd done that research as well. There was actually nothing. Was there something in the 10.7? I'm not sure. But I went onto the council maps anyway, and it was definitely a bushfire zone. And I just looked at the proximity of the trees to the back of the house and went, optimistically it's 29. I don't think it's going to
in terms of its BAL rating.
BAL rating.
Yep.
I don't think it is. So before we actually put in the offer, I got into a bushfire consultant, and he said, send me the address, and he got back to me straight away, and he went, 100%, that's flame zone. So we knew what we were going into. Yeah. But that block, we just went, it's just beautiful. Yeah. The outlook is just everything we wanted.
Yes.
I grew up at the foothills of the mountains, so maybe that looking at mountains, we used to spend a lot of time in the Blue Mountains as kids. So that we could see ourselves there, and we just went, well, if it's flame zone, it's flame zone. Yeah.
So for anyone who's listening, you in Australia, you obviously rate blocks on their bushfire attack level. Flame zone is the highest level, so it brings a bunch of conditions in terms of building material choices, glazing choices, what your house needs to do in the event of it protecting itself from fire, and then also specific things that you need to do to the actual block in terms of firefighting water supply, asset protection zones, all of those kinds of things. So it is a whole constraint that you've obviously embraced because of your love of the block. And I think too that decision of, okay, how can we rationalise what we do renovation-wise, keep the footprint as it is, work with what we've got so that you're not obviously, I suppose, extending the house significantly and then balancing the cost of doing that with having to build to that flame zone. The work that you'll do to the existing house, part of that, I imagine, is that you're going to be targeting upgrading the existing house so that it meets all of those requirements.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the house was built in 1981 before there were any requirements for bushfire protection. The house is rectangular with the long side facing onto the bush, and our block it's basically square aside from the handle of the
battle axe. Yep.
From the diagonal corner from the battle axe to the bottom is about 26 metres, so we're uphill of all those big trees.
Okay.
But from the back room, if we went 100 metres, we're sitting in someone else's family room. So it's a long, skinny finger of tract of land. So I wouldn't say there would never be a fire. I think it's a different risk to sitting with the Blue Mountains in your backyard. Or we'd actually looked at another block a little bit further out where, again, you did swear in the Blue Mountains there was that much bush. I think that's a much higher risk. To personally escape from the fire in this house, you just walk up there into the driveway and you're in the middle of suburbia.
Gotcha.
So I'm not going to dismiss the risk, but we were sort of more comfortable with that than, hundreds of kilometres of bushland in our backyard.
Yeah. And so you say, sorry, you're looking down a hill.
Yeah.
So that's going to play into that flame zone rating as well, because obviously fire moves faster up a hill, and if that hill has got trees all over it, I know with our property, that's what's driving a lot of the bushfire zoning on it, because it is a hilly property, and those hill faces are quite steep and they're all treed. So that does drive that because of the way that fire moves in those conditions.
And the house has 10 of the windows in the house are actually full-size doors with a full-size window next to it. The French doors, and they've got the wooden. I always get Muntons.
The mullions, yeah. Mullions and transoms,
Transoms, they're the ones, yeah. So very colonial looking, and I reckon they would last about 2 seconds.
Yes, yeah.
So from day one, from the very first thing, it was like the windows are being upgraded. And the windows were going to be upgraded anyway, even before I knew about the bushfire confirmation, because I wanted to be thermally efficient. So I'm sick and tired of living in a cold, drafty house. So I was always going to upgrade those windows anyway. It just means that these ones will either have to be upgraded to the full flame zone spec or some sort of shutter system. And I understand there's a bit of a trade-off there, depending on what window you get, depends on what shutter you get. You can sort of trade off the strength of each.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And so you sound like you've already obviously been doing a lot of research. What are your plans in terms of, when you're thinking you'll kind of formalise what you're going to do, the steps that you're taking, what is next? How is that all playing out for you?
So I've drawn up what I'm calling my conceptual design, because I'm not a builder, not a structural engineer. So the very next thing we're doing is getting a builder on board. So I sort of spoke to approached four. Two weren't available. One said it's just not really in our price. It's not what we do, and the other one said we just don't have the space. But I've got two other builders I'm talking to. One known personally, Kids Sport. You get change people on the sidelines. And same with the other one, recommended through friends who know him through sport. So we're trying to get them onto the site. They both said, can we come and visit the site? Unfortunately, the current owners don't want to let us on the site.
Oh, okay.
Which is proving to be a bit of a problem.
That's challenging, isn't it?
It is very challenging.
Yeah. So they're not going to do that until you settle, is that?
That's what they're saying. We settle on the 18th of October.
Yeah.
So that's a problem.
Yep.
I thought I might be able to at least get hold of the floor plans.
Yes.
We had asked before we actually agreed on the contract, or I was sort of in the negotiation phase of the contract, and the owner said, "Oh well, I have them, but I don't know where they are. I've packed them."
Yeah.
So I approached council, but because we're not registered as the owners, they won't release them either.
Okay.
So Yes, that's kind of a bit of a glitch.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that the owner's going to come around. She's had a bit of a, to be fair to her, her husband isn't well, so she has a lot
She's
of
got
stress.
on her plate. Yeah.
They're an older couple. She's got a lot on.
Yeah.
So we're just going to give her a little bit of space, and then hopefully she'll...
And have they been in the house for a long time?
They built it.
Okay, so I can imagine there's a massive emotional shift for them actually moving from there as well. And if he's unwell, maybe it's not happened by choice, and all of that's going to be challenging, isn't it? So
it is. So and it's not a movement by choice.
Yeah.
She just realised she can't maintain that bigger a property on her own.
Yes.
And they want to move closer to their children.
Yes.
So, so I totally
that's
understand
hard,
where
isn't
she's
it?
coming
Yeah.
from. But I'm
Yeah.
sort of going, please let me in. I just need 2 hours. So look, we'll give her some space and try again when maybe she's on a better day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I thought I might write a nice letter and explain how much it means to us.
Yeah.
Because if we can't get the builders locked in, we might lose that opportunity with the builders. And then, to the question that I put up, do we live through a renovation? And the overriding one was, well, whether you want to or not, the builder may actually say no.
Yeah.
And given the number of walls that are moving, I think a builder will probably reasonably say no.
Yeah, yeah. So Elizabeth asked in the group recently, what were people's thoughts on her living in the house with her family whilst it was being renovated, because trying to kind of navigate that timing of settlement of the other property, of your existing property moving, making those works done, trying to compress, obviously not paying rent somewhere, and navigating all of that. And there was a lot of kind of feedback in, well, you just need to obviously know what you're going to be dealing with, and then checking with the builder, because some builders will just insist that you're not on site for the renovation, particularly if the whole house is being kind of dealt with. Sometimes builders will accommodate it if where they're working can be securitised and kept quite separate, but from a workplace health and safety point of view, it's in a builder's interest to not have you on site on a regular basis during a project. So, so navigating that's always a bit tricky.
The fact that I've been looking at this for so long and being very picky in what I will accept, because I know what good design looks like now. I know that I'm not going to I was never going to pick a house, no matter how pretty it looked, if there were no windows on the northern side and if it was poorly oriented. I had a very good filtering system, and I learnt all that through you. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
And I think just being exposed to all of that, my thoughts on what we wanted, what we needed, were very developed. So I could be quite discerning very quickly.